Hey guys, this fight over the juror number 1 interview in the Maya Kowalski case continues. Defense counsel has asked the court to reconsider its previous order on the scope of the juror interview. We'll take a look at that. Maya Kowalski's team has also fired back with an affidavit from attorney Deborah Salisbury saying that defense counsel intentionally misrepresented her relationship with the juror number 1 and his wife. So it continues to be a nasty situation, but let's look at this motion by defense counsel to expand the scope of the interview. They basically repeat their arguments to the judge in terms of the juror didn't tell that he was a prior victim of a crime. He's had previous issues with child abuse stuff in his life. I'm not saying he did it. And what I'm saying is they're saying that he's had exposure to it, and that the situation with his wife is something that the court should look more closely into. You already know that, and you may think they have a good point or you may not, but I don't think they particularly move the needle much there here, even though they do include a new document allegedly provided by the wife to jurors at a dinner after the trial was over. Anyway, what would make these guys happy? Because now we're going to see it in black and white. What are they asking the judge to do here? It's pretty expansive. Let's take a look. So they're saying the current scope of the juror number 1 interview is insufficient to investigate the allegations of misconduct. And they make a good point to start off with, saying even plaintiff's counsel has conceded that if juror number 1 is simply asked whether he improperly shared information with his wife, he will repeat the denials he made before and during trial, which I agree. So defense counsel says that's what's going to happen. Plaintiff counsel says that's what's going to happen. So why are they even doing this juror interview, particularly with the scope that the judge has laid out? It does seem to be a nullity. Not sure why the judge allowed it, but in the scope that he has, because the juror had made these representations during the trial, but perhaps he just wanted to further clarify, and that can shore it up for appeal purposes too. But defense counsel is basically saying that the way the scope is now, we're not going to find out anything new. Of course, that assumes that if the scope were broader, there'd be something new to find, and I'm not sure that you have to agree with that, of course. Anyway, let's see what they ask for. They're saying that there's evidence that the juror omitted multiple pieces of evidence on the jury form, harbored a pro-plaintiff bias during the trial, and failed to disclose his wife's extensive contacts with the pro-plaintiff social media accounts, friendship with the plaintiff's advocate, and such. So let's see. Again, what do they think the questions should be to really get into this? Now, again, I don't know how you can do this without doing discovery and evidence and stuff, and the judge just isn't going to do that. But you can ask the questions, I suppose, or at least that's what you can ask the judge to allow to have happen. I don't think they're going to get the things that they're asking for here. They might get some of it, but let's take a look at the scope of this. So they want to have this juror questioned with these additional questions. Spouse communication during trial. Tell us your wife's name. Does she post using the pseudonym Hippo Lover? Does she use a hippo as her avatar? What devices does she use to access the internet? Post online? Did you share a device with your spouse? If so, what? If either your device or hers or a shared device is static, like a computer, they actually still exist, I guess, as opposed to a laptop. Where in your home is it located? Do you and your wife typically visit social media sites and post in a common area of the home, living room or family room or veranda? And this gets, I think, to the common sense idea. If these guys are living together and he's serving on the jury and she's watching it all day long and talking about it during the day and night, that it's quite possible that that topic came up. However, they're also saying the juror's not going to admit it if it did happen, and we don't know that it did happen. So I don't know that these things really provide contradictory evidence of that. If the juror stays on his toes in terms of either denying it appropriately or, as they say, he's just going to deny it anyway. Whatever. We request that the post attached to the juror number 1 motion be shown to the juror and the following questions posed. Have you ever seen any of these attached posts? Which ones and when? During the trial, were you aware that your wife was posting comments? Have you ever seen any of the posts made during trial? When? During trial, was there any communication between the two of you regarding our online activity related to this case, verbal or nonverbal? Yeah. Did you wink at each other? Did you later learn that your wife was posting during trial? When? Were you ever present when she was watching live streams or videos, reading information or posting online about this case either before or during the trial? Did you ever discuss your wife's post with her before, during, or after trial? I mean, they might have after the trial. I'm not sure, what that gets at. But the before and during is relevant, but still covered under the judge's broad question that he would ask. Whatever. Did you express to her your approval of or agreement with any of her posts? Were you aware at the time that she was paying to accelerate or enhance some of her posts? Follow-up needed as regarding knowledge and form of payment used. Did you and your wife discuss the reference case before trial? Do you know if she posted regarding the reference case before trial? And did you do that? Were you aware before trial that she favored plaintiffs? Did you? This would be kind of like a whole trial sort of examination here, huh? How about her relationship with the plaintiff's team? How did it come about that your wife was in the courtroom during the trial? Were you aware that she had plans to come? How did you become aware? When did you become aware? Were you aware of any communication between your wife and Jules during the trial? Were you present during any such communication, verbal or nonverbal or otherwise? Were you aware that your wife was meeting Jules during trial? Were you aware of your wife's presence in the courtroom? Why did you not disclose it? Did she communicate with Jules or Dr. Richards while she was in the courtroom? Follow-up needed with questions regarding details of communication. Did she communicate with any witnesses or any witness for the Kowalskis? Follow-up needed. For details, did she have any communication during trial with any member of the Anderson Glenn law firm, any person associated with their team? Follow-up. When did your wife first communicate with Nick Whitney, Greg Anderson, Jennifer Anderson, or any member of their team? When did you become aware of your wife's communications with Nick Whitney, now it's Jen Anderson, Greg Anderson, or any other member of the team? When did you first have contact with Greg Anderson, Nick Whitney, Jen Anderson, or anyone from their law firm outside the courtroom? Follow-up. When did you first have contact with Jules outside the courtroom? When did you first have contact with Dr. Richards outside the courtroom? When did you first have contact with Dr. Kirkpatrick outside the courtroom? Do you know Deborah Salisbury? And remember, she's filed an affidavit in this case saying, I do not know this guy. If so, how and when did you first become aware of her? Did you have any contact with Deborah Salisbury before the trial, during trial, after trial? Did your wife have any contact with her before, during, or after the trial? Follow up. Recently discovered additional evidence of misconduct. Defendant has recently learned that post-verdict, a number of jurors and alternate jurors met for dinner, which of course they can do. And the juror number one's wife can be there or can provide this note, I suppose, if I don't know how it happened. A note from juror number one's wife is given to all attendees. We have been given phone numbers of those you might wish to contact, and they've all said they would love to hear from you. It's got Jack Kowalski, Nick Whitney, and then down at the bottom of this thing, after posting up some YouTube channels that she suggests, if this is her note, it does somewhere on there have her name and email and such. I think phone number 2. As the case is on appeal, be careful what is said to media per Nick Whitney. Okay. The note provides contact information for Nick Whitney, plaintiff's counsel, as well as Jack Kowalski and juror number one's wife. The top of the note reads, we've been given phone numbers of those you might wish to contact. They've all said they would love to hear from you. Next to Nick Whitney's cell phone number is the message, please express our overwhelming gratitude for having delivered justice. All of the jurors fulfilled their solemn duty and we are forever in their debt. As the case on appeal, be careful what is said per Nick Whitney. No member of defendant's legal team has initiated communication with any of the jurors, either directly or indirectly, nor has any member of defendant's legal team attempted to deputize an online community to take actions the counsel in the case would be prohibited to take. Well, there has been interaction, I think, between some of the defense team and people on Reddit, or at least it appeared that way to me. The evidence suggests the same cannot be said for plaintiff's counsel. This note delivers a message directly from plaintiff's counsel to the jurors expressing overwhelming gratitude and how they would love to hear from them, but be careful what you say. So this note demands further inquiry, not just from juror number one, but also juror number one's wife, plaintiff's counsel, and Jack Kowalski, the defense team says. So now they want not just to have juror one interviewed, but all these other people too. So now here's more questions they want to ask to juror number one. Have you ever seen this note? Did your wife deliver this note directly or indirectly to any colleagues on the jury, whether they were jurors or alternates? Who did she give it to? Did your wife discuss the content of this note with Nick Whitney or Greg Anderson or anyone from their office? Was your wife asked to send the attached note to the jury alternates? By whom? What was the response and who responded? Then they want the wife to take the stand and be questioned by the judge. Have you ever seen the attached note? Did you type it or ask someone to type it for you? Did you deliver the note to any member of the jury or any alternate? Who? When? Did anyone ask or suggest indirectly or directly that you deliver the note to the jurors? Who? When? Did you ever speak with Nick Whitney or Greg Anderson or anyone from their office about the note or its contents? And if so, what were the specifics of that conversation? Were Nick Whitney or Greg Anderson or anyone from their office aware of the note either before or after you delivered it to the jurors? When did they learn of this note? And what if any, was their response. It is quite interesting that the defense got this note, don't you think? Assuming it's authentic, or even if it's false, it's still interesting that they got it. But if it's real, who turned it over to them? That's interesting. How did you obtain Nick Whitney's message to the jury contained in the note, and when? Then they went plaintiff's counsel questioned. Did you know on November 6th that juror number one's wife had been in the courtroom a few days earlier? If so, how did you know? When did you meet juror number one's wife for the first time, and where? Who initiated contact? We are aware of the note written by juror number one's wife. When did you learn of it? Did you suggest to juror number one, directly or indirectly, that she deliver a note to the jurors? How did juror number one obtain the message from Nick Whitney to the jury contained in the note, and when? What did Nick Whitney say about the jurors speaking to the press? When? Did he ask juror number one's wife to deliver that message directly or indirectly? Then they want Jack Kowalski to be interviewed. Did you know on November 6th that juror number one's wife had been in the courtroom a few days earlier? If so, how did you know that? During the trial, did you communicate with Jules? If so, did any communication include a reference to juror number one's wife? Juror number one or his wife? Have you ever had contact with juror number one or his wife? If so, when did you first make contact with juror number one and or his wife? So the question out of all this is whether this note that defense now has, and assuming it's real, will it convince the judge to expand the scope of the interview either to juror number one or to other persons? That's what they're relying on to make that happen. In terms of the other things, the other items, I don't know that stuff's going to move the needle, because while they provide more details for why they think juror number one should be asked more questions, I think those arguments were present when they originally argued all this to the judge, so they're going to need to rely on this note heavily to change the judge's mind, in my opinion. This thing seems like it never ends. At some point, the judge has to bring a conclusion to this issue so that he can move on to the other issues in the case. But this at least tells us what defense counsel is wanting to see out of this, and what they think should be investigated. And there are some interesting points they bring up. It's quite expansive, obviously, the request they have there, but there's a lot unusual in this case. Not only what happened to Maya herself, but what happened during the trial as well. So we'll see what the judge does. That's it. Thanks. Bye.